So I'd like to present our next speaker. Next speaker is Richmond Yeboah. So Richmond Yeboah is a master's student at the McGill School of Information Studies, and he will be speaking on value perceptions of information sources among academic librarians. Richmond, you have the floor.
Okay, so hello everyone. I want to thank you all for taking some time off to come listen to this presentation. I also want to thank the organizers of the conference for giving me the opportunity to share these project findings with you. And finally, I want to thank my supervisor and the research team, especially for their support in the questionnaire validation process. In the next 12 to 15 minutes, I'm going to talk to you about the value perceptions of academic librarians on paid and free information sources. By paid information sources, I mean information behind paywalls, and then free sources are those that are available for free. So, because of the increase in the digital medium of publishing information, there is abundance of information in our world today. Some of this information are available for free, and others are behind paywalls. Previous theories in economics have revealed that consumers value commodities with restricted access. And one of such restriction is the financial cost of access. So I sought to find out if the financial cost of access to information also influences how information seekers value information sources. More specifically, I sought to find out what factors are more or less important to information seekers than the financial cost of access, and what are the value perceptions of information seekers about free and paid sources. And then last, I also wanted to know, are information seekers willing to continue using paid sources and recommend them to others? So this study was a pilot study in preparation for my PhD research. And the research instrument was a survey with both open-ended and closed-ended questions. These questions were sent to 65 librarians at the McGill and Concordia University libraries through their official emails. In all, 25 of them filled out the questionnaire. Descriptive statistics was used to analyze the data from the closed-end questions and thematic analysis for the qualitative responses. Okay, so background of my participants. The result shows that majority of the respondents were female and were within 40 to 49 years. 18 of them work in a role of reference, subject, and technical librarians, except for 2 who are software developer and an administrator. Participants were asked to indicate if there is a budget allocated for purchasing information in their organization. An explanation note was added to explain to the participant that, so an explanation note was added to the participant to explain to them that the money we're talking about is not the budget allocated for purchasing information for patrons, but the money that is set apart for they themselves in acquiring information for their personal job obligations. In all, 17 participants said they have budget allocated, and 5 said they don't have budget allocated for purchasing information. So, participants were asked to rate on a 5-point scale from very less important to very much important, how important each of the factors on the y-axis is to them compared to the financial cost of access to information when they are choosing information sources. So overall, the participants did not see any of the factors as less important compared to cost. They saw quality, reliability, and trustworthiness of the source as the most important than financial cost of access, and participants were neutral about ability to download for offline access and convenience of the interface. Again, the overall ratings of the level of importance were stratified based on the answers to the question, is there a budget allocated in your organization for purchasing information? So the figure shows the results. Overall, participants who have money allocated for purchasing information care less about financial cost of access than those without budget allocation. The only factor is that those without budget allocation were concerned more about than those with budget allocated, where the ability to download for offline access and the convenience of the interface. Okay, so in an open-ended question, participants were asked to indicate other factors they consider more important when choosing information sources. The factors that came out as most important were findability, which they defined as the ability to find the information they are looking for with ease, reputation of the source, match between the content from the source and their needs, indicating that they would choose a source which can address multiple needs over one that addresses only a single need. They also indicated that they would choose content with less DRM restrictions. Participants were also asked to rate on a 5-point scale from strongly disagree to strongly agree their level of disagreement or agreement to each of the statements about free and paid sources. And this figure shows a comparison of the average ratings for the free and paid sources. Overall, paid sources were rated as being more valuable than free sources. The statement that had the highest difference was the uniqueness of content. Participants also said that free sources have easily understandable content and help them accomplish their job obligations than paid sources. Okay, so next we move to the willingness to use or recommend paid sources to others. Participants were also asked to rate how likely they are to continue using paid sources or recommend it to others on a 5-point scale from very unlikely to very likely. As shown in the table, participants are more willing to use paid sources themselves than to recommend it to others, although the difference is not very high, but the next slide gives more information on this outcome. So in a follow-up question, participants were asked to state the reasons they will or will not continue using them and recommend paid sources to others. Now, participants indicated that they will continue using paid sources because of its unique content, reputation, and because their institution subscribes to them. However, they will not recommend it for others just because they use it, but it will depend on the information it holds, its financial and DRM barriers, access barriers. So in conclusion, it was discovered that academic librarians are less concerned about the financial cost of access to information compared to other factors, especially those who have budget allocated for purchasing information. This means that information professionals are willing to pay for quality, reliable, and trustworthy content. They don't really care much about the cost of access. Again, information professionals believe that paid sources are valuable than free sources, especially regarding uniqueness of content. Especially regarding the uniqueness of content. Now, given that they rated uniqueness of content as important than financial cost, and they use paid sources because of its unique contents, it is recommended that information creators and publishers should pay attention to the uniqueness of their contents. Again, academic librarians will not always recommend paid sources just because they use them, but they are more concerned about its financial and DRM access barriers. Therefore, information providers should work on reducing the DRM access restrictions so that they can get more of these information professionals suggesting their content to others. They also believe free sources help them accomplish their job obligation than paid sources. Now, given that their institutions subscribe to powerful paid sources, it will be interesting to find out why they said this and what they use free information sources for. This is also because it has been discovered that information seekers tend to appreciate free sources after use than paid sources because they tend to have high expectation for information that they pay for prior to purchase and use. So at this point, I would open for questions and then contributions based on the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Richmond, for that interesting presentation. Yeah, so quite interesting about how people are reacting to paid information sources, and we've also been, we've listened to presentations on open access, so it's quite related a little bit. So do we have a question in the chat? So what is an example of a unique content,
Okay, so uniqueness of content actually talks about how original the contents are, how it's the user is looking for an information that can add to their knowledge, something that is not available elsewhere. So they are actually looking for something very original, essential that they cannot find from anywhere. So that is how it's defined in the literature.
Okay, I believe that answers the question. Do we have any other question? Okay, Philip Monjan.
Yes, thank you for the great presentation, super interesting. I would add to the answer you just provided that, my work focuses on research or scientific, like scholarly communication. So in this realm, the thing about the originality of the content, and as is well known by publishers, is that every paper is its own mini monopoly of knowledge due to the originality requirement of research. So, and that's why we pay billions of dollars for that thing, is because you cannot replace any of those papers by any other ones or stuff. But anyway, that's just my editorial comment. My question is relating to, because you mentioned something about the requirements of the job. I forgot how you said it, but like, because librarians, they buy things because, not necessarily because they want to buy them, but because they're serving a community that either needs or demand or requests that these things are purchased. So I wonder if that's part of your study, or if that's something that you want to dig in further developments of this work. Okay,
so in answering that question, as I said, this is a pilot study. I will be focusing on another population, but I actually focused on librarians because of their knowledge and expertise in information setting, so that I can get a basis to move on. But in relation to that, I did have an internship with the Concordia Library just last semester. And then I realized that sometimes librarians are on special project teams that requires that they get access to some information. For instance, the team that I was on, we had to purchase information from the Nelson group of company about interface design and others, which was not available through the information they provide for their patrons. So the focus really was on such kind of information needs that the librarians have, not the one that they actually buy for their patrons. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Oops.
Thank you too.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for the answer for the question. I'm trying to see if there's any other questions. So I think I should also raise my hand. I have a question. All right. So Richmond, thank you for the presentation. Just I think in relation to the previous question, the question asked by Philip Mongion, I want to know. I'm just curious if you're willing to check other population, because I think librarians here they talk about quality, but you mentioned that they were willing to to use paid sources because their institutions have subscribed to them, right? So I'm just wondering if are they willing to use paid sources if they have to pay by themselves without using the institutional subscription. For instance, if they want to access an article and then it's not being subscribed to by their library, are they willing to use to pay for such an article for their research? That's number one. And then number two question is, you mentioned the thematic analysis of the open-ended question, the question. I'm just wondering what type of thematic analysis you used, and then if not, maybe you consider that in your PhD. Just looking for if you have any specifics. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much. I don't really know if the first one was a question, but I think it's more of a suggestion, right?
I think it's both.
Okay, so yes, that's what I've thought about, because as information professionals, even their answers about choosing quality and other stuff shows that they are very their information literacy is very high. So considering other population is something that I'm going to do actually in the next project when I start my PhD. And the second question about thematic analysis, this was just the answers that were given were very, very short answers. And so it didn't really require much. It was just grouping the like ones together and then finding the common themes here. So it's a summary of all that they wrote in the open-ended questions. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So, so in case you want to maybe consider like an interview or something later in your PhD, you want to look at maybe Brown and Clark, 2006, one of the popular thematic analysis. There are other ones, but I think that one is mostly used for thematic analysis. Thank you. That's an interesting
Thank you.
presentation.